Pay attention to this body. It is floating in the cold, black waters off the coast of Huelva, Spain. It is 4:30 in the morning, April 30th, 1943. A local sardine fisherman is about to pull it out of the sea. The man in the water is dressed in the uniform of a major in the Royal Marines. He is wearing a trench coat. He has a life jacket, and chained to his wrist is a black leather briefcase. To the fisherman, this is a tragedy, a casualty of war, a drowning victim. But to the British intelligence officers sitting in a smoky basement in London, waiting by a telephone, this dead man is the most sophisticated weapon ever deployed against the Third Reich. His name, according to the ID card in his wallet, is Major William Martin. But that is a lie. He was never a major. He was never a soldier. In fact, when he was alive, he was a homeless drifter who ate rat poison just to stop the hunger pangs in his stomach. He was a man ignored by society, discarded by the system, and buried in a pauper's grave. But in death, he is about to fool Adolf Hitler, move entire panzer divisions with his cold dead hand, and save 30,000 Allied lives. This is the story of the man who never was, and the most audacious conspiracy in the history of warfare. To understand the hoax, you have to understand the desperation. London, January 1943. The war is at a tipping point. The Allies have won in North Africa. The Americans have arrived. The next step is obvious. It is written on every map in every war room in Berlin and London. Sicily. The island of Sicily is the stepping stone to Europe. It is the target. Winston Churchill knows it. Franklin Roosevelt knows it. And most importantly, Adolf Hitler knows it. The Germans are not stupid. They are fortifying Sicily. They are moving divisions, aircraft, and E-boats. If the Allies land there, they will be walking into a meat grinder. It will be a massacre that could stall the liberation of Europe for years. In the basement of the British Admiralty, in a windowless room that smells of stale tobacco and nervous sweat, a small group of men is trying to solve an impossible equation. How do you invade an island when the enemy knows exactly where you are coming, when you are coming, and how you are coming? There's only one answer. You have to make them look somewhere else. This is the world of the 20 Committee, the double-cross system. A world of liars, forgers, and eccentrics. Two men sit at the center of this web. Ewan Montague, a naval intelligence officer who used to be a lawyer, a man with a sharp forensic mind. And Charles Chumley, pronounced Chumley, a tall, gangly, eccentric RAF officer with a mustache and a mind that worked in strange, corkscrew loops. Chumley had an idea. It was a bizarre idea, inspired by a detective novel. What if, he said, we get a body, a dead body. We dress him as an officer. We give him false papers, papers that say we aren't attacking Sicily, but Greece. And we drop him where the Germans will find him. It sounds like madness. It sounds like a bad movie plot. But in the desperation of 1943, madness was a strategic asset. They called it Operation Mincemeat. But there was a problem, a logistical nightmare that no one had anticipated. Where do you find a body? You can't just kill someone. That's murder. You can't use a soldier who died in training. Their families would talk. You need a body that looks like it drowned at sea. You need a body with no visible wounds. You need a body with no family to ask questions. You need a ghost. And this brings us to the true protagonist of our story, the man who would become the weapon. His name was Glyndwr Michael. He was not a hero. He was a tragedy. Born in Wales, the son of a coal miner. His father committed suicide when Glyndwr was 15. His mother died when he was 31. He was homeless, illiterate, and mentally unstable. He drifted to London, living in abandoned warehouses, eating scraps. In January 1943, freezing and starving, he found some bread paste in a warehouse. He ate it. It contained phosphorus, hot poison. He died in agony in St. Pancras Hospital. The phosphorus shut down his liver. But here is the cruel, forensic twist that Montague and Chumley were looking for. Phosphorus poisoning doesn't leave obvious marks on the body. It causes fluid to gather in the lungs. To a pathologist, it looks exactly like drowning. Montague and Chumley went to the morgue. They stood over the stainless steel table. They looked at this frail, 34-year-old drifter, a man who had never been given a chance in life. They made a deal with the coroner. They falsified the death records. They claimed the body for the crown. It was a violation. It was body snatching. It was ethically monstrous. They were going to take this poor man, freeze him, dress him up, and throw him into the ocean. But Montague justified it with a single, cold thought. This man died for nothing. We're going to give him a purpose. We're going to make him the most important man in the British military. They put GLYNDWR Michael in a refrigerated canister. They locked the door. And then the real work began. The investigation in reverse. If you're going to fool the Abwehr, German military intelligence, you cannot just put a uniform on a corpse. The Germans are thorough. They're suspicious. They will check everything. They won't just look at the documents. They will look at the man. Does he look like an officer? Does he smell like an officer? What is in his pockets? Who does he love? Who does he owe money to? If one detail is wrong, if his socks are the wrong material, if his haircut is too fresh, if the date on a train ticket doesn't match the weather report for that day, the Germans will know it's a plant. And they will know Sicily is the real target. Montague and Chumley stopped being intelligence officers. They became novelists. They became method actors. They sat in room 13 of the Admiralty and began to invent a human being. They named him William Martin. Rank, Major, Royal Marines. Why Royal Marines? Because Marines wear battle dress that is easily obtained. And because a major is senior enough to carry secret documents, but junior enough not to be intimately known by everyone in London. They gave him a personality. He wasn't a stiff, perfect soldier. He was a bit sloppy. He liked to party. He lived beyond his means. He was in love. This is where the true crime element becomes fascinating. They created pocket litter. In espionage, pocket litter is the trash you carry that proves who you are. Montague reached into his own pocket and pulled out a set of keys, a lighter, a few coins. This, he said, is what makes a man real. They started building the physical evidence of Major Martin's life. They got an identity card, but they couldn't use a photo of GLYNDWR Michael. He looked too dead. He looked too starved. They needed a photo of someone who looked like him, but alive. They searched for a double. They found a resemblance in a young officer named Ronnie Reed. They took his photo. They aged it. They stained it. They glued it to the ID card. Then they gave him a fiancée. They named her Pam. They needed a photo of Pam, a girl Major Martin would die for. Montague asked the secretary in the office, a woman named Jean Leslie, for a photo. She gave him a picture of herself in a bathing suit, smiling by a river. It was perfect. It was the kind of photo a lonely officer would keep in his wallet. But a photo wasn't enough. They needed letters. Love letters. Montague and Chumley sat down and wrote letters from Pam to Bill. I do think that you might have written to me. I try not to show it, but I was hurt. They made the relationship messy. They made it real. They argued in the letters about the wedding date. They argued about money. They added a receipt for a diamond engagement ring. 53 pounds. A huge sum for a major. It showed he was reckless. It showed he was desperate to impress her. They added a letter from his father. A grumpy, old-fashioned letter complaining about the war and family finances. They added a letter from a bank manager, an overdraft notice. Major Martin was in debt. 79 pounds. This was a crucial detail. It explained why he might be distracted. It explained why he might be careless. They spent weeks aging the paper. They folded and unfolded the letters hundreds of times. They rubbed them against their uniforms to simulate the friction of a wallet. They were creating a forensic masterpiece, a trail of breadcrumbs designed to lead the German detectives to one conclusion: this is a real man. But the most important document, the key detail, was the letter he would carry in his briefcase. The letter that would lose the war for Germany. It had to be a letter between two high-ranking generals. A letter so secret that it wouldn't be sent by radio. They drafted a letter from General Archibald Nye in London to General Alexander in North Africa. The letter had to be casual. It couldn't sound like orders. It had to sound like two colleagues talking shop. And hidden in the chatter about medals and sardines was the lie. The letter casually mentioned that the Allies were planning to invade Greece and Sardinia. It suggested that Sicily was just a decoy. We are planting the idea that we are going for Sicily to cover the real operation. It was a lie wrapped in a truth wrapped in a lie. They typed it. They had General Nye sign it personally. They put it in an envelope. They sealed it with the official wax seal of the Imperial General Staff. They put the envelope in a black briefcase. They added a book of stamps, a pack of cigarettes, a box of matches, and finally, they looked at the body in the cooler. GLYNDWR Michael. He was frozen solid. His face was gray. They needed to defrost him. They needed to dress him. And this is where the macabre reality of the operation set in. You cannot dress a corpse in tight military boots. The feet don't bend. They had to use a heater. They had to massage the limbs of this dead, homeless man, forcing his stiff arms into the tunic of a Royal Marine. They had to put his underwear on, his socks. Montague later wrote that the process was cold-blooded. It was intimate and horrifying. They were playing dolls with a dead man. But as they buttoned the trench coat, as they strapped the life jacket on, something changed. He stopped looking like a corpse. He started looking like Major William Martin. They chained the briefcase to his wrist. They checked the pockets one last time. Wallet, keys, letters from Pam, overdraft notice. He was ready, but where to drop him? They needed a place where the currents would wash him ashore. A place where the Spanish authorities were neutral, but where the German abwehr was active and influential. Huelva, the Atlantic coast of Spain. There was a German agent there, Adolf Kloss, a fanatic, efficient. If the body washed up there, Kloss would hear about it. They loaded the body into a canister designed to transport dry ice. It looked like a chemical weapon container. They labeled it optical instruments. Handle with care. They drove it to a submarine base in Scotland. The submarine HMS Seraph was waiting. Her commander, Lieutenant Jewell, was the only one on board who knew what was inside the canister. To the crew, it was just secret cargo. April 19th, 1943. The Seraph slips out of the harbor. Deep in the belly of the submarine, amidst the smell of diesel and recycled air, rests the body of GLYNDWR Michael. He is about to go on his final journey. He is traveling to Spain to meet the Nazis. And back in London, in room 13, Montague and Chumley sit and wait. The script is written. The props are set. The actor is in place. Now, they just need the audience to believe the performance. April 30th, 1943, 4:15 a.m. The submarine HMS Seraph breaks the surface of the Atlantic just a mile off the coast of Huelva, Spain. The night is pitch black. The sea is calm. Commander Jewell orders the hatch opened. The crew hauls the steel canister onto the deck. It is heavy, cold, and ominous. They unlock the bolts. When the lid comes off, a mist of dry ice swirls into the night air. And then the smell hits them. The smell of thawing meat. The smell of death. They pull the body out. Major William Martin. He is fully dressed in his uniform, the trench coat buttoned to the chin, the Mae Westlife jacket inflated. He looks like a soldier who has succumbed to the sea. But under the uniform, he is still Goyndwr Michael, the homeless man who died of rat poison in a warehouse. This is the moment of commitment. Once the body is in the water, there is no turning back. Jewel is a hard man, a submarine commander, but he pauses. He gathers the officers on the small, wet deck. He reads a prayer. Not for Major Martin. He doesn't exist, but for the soul of the man they are using. I said, I will take heed to my ways, that I sin not with my tongue. Psalm 39. It is a surreal funeral, a burial at sea for a man who is supposed to be found. Jewel checks the briefcase one last time. The chain is secure around the dead man's wrist. He checks the pockets, the wallet, the letters, the keys. Everything is in place. They gently lower the body into the water. The wash of the propellers catches him. The life jacket holds him up. He bobs in the black swell, face down, drifting toward the Spanish coast. Jewel orders the engines ahead. The Seraph dives, vanishing into the deep. Major Martin is alone. The deception has begun. 5 hours later, 9:30 a.m. A local fisherman named Jose Antonio Reymaria is checking his sardine lines. The sun is rising, burning off the mist. He sees something floating in the water. A shape, a uniform. He pulls his boat alongside. He crosses himself. He sees the rank insignia, a British officer, and he sees the black briefcase chained to the wrist. To Jose, this is just a sad discovery. But to the intelligence agencies of Europe, this is the crime scene. He hauls the body to shore. He hands it over to the Spanish naval authorities. Now the clock starts ticking. In London, Montague and Chumley are waiting by the phone. They're sweating. They have launched the weapon, but they have no idea if it will hit the target. The plan relies on two things happening. First, the Spanish must find the body. Second, they must not realize it was frozen. If a pathologist looks closely, they might see that the decomposition is wrong. A body drowned at sea decomposes differently than a body frozen in a morgue. If they run a toxicology report, they will find the phosphorus. They will find the rat poison. The whole lie will unravel. May 1st, Huelva Cemetery. The autopsy. This is the first critical test. The investigation phase. The Spanish coroner is an experienced doctor. He lays the body on the slab. The room is hot. Flies are buzzing. Standing in the corner is Francis Haselden. He is the British vice consul in Huelva. He is in on the secret. His job is to guide the investigation without looking like he is guiding it. He has to act like a grieving official who just wants to get this over with, while secretly praying the doctor is incompetent. The coroner undresses the body. He notes the lack of external injuries. He notes the fluid in the lungs. Asphyxia by immersion, the doctor mutters. Drowning. Haselden holds his breath. Don't look at the liver. Don't look at the skin tissue. The doctor pauses. He looks at the body. He has been in the water for 5 days. Haselden nods quickly. Yes, we had a plane go down about that time. The doctor shrugs. It is hot. The smell is getting worse. He doesn't want to cut the body open. He writes down the cause of death. Drowning. Haselden exhales. The first hurdle is cleared. Goyndwr Michael has officially become a casualty of war. He is buried with full military honors in the Huelva Cemetery. A homeless Welshman laid to rest as a hero of the Royal Marines. But the body was just the delivery system. The real weapon is the briefcase. The Spanish Navy takes possession of the briefcase. They lock it in a safe. Now enters the villain. His name is Adolf Kloss. He is the German vice consul in Huelva, but that is just a title. He is the head of the Abwehr, German intelligence, in the region. He is efficient, ruthless, and he has spies everywhere. Within hours of the body being found, Kloss knows. His network of informants, dock workers, police officers, loose-lipped officials, Tell him a British officer washed ashore carrying documents. Klaus is like a shark smelling blood. Secret documents? Chained to her wrist? It sounds too good to be true. Or, it sounds like exactly the kind of intelligence coup that could make his career. He contacts his superiors in Madrid and Berlin. I must have that briefcase. This is where the false leads turn into a game of psychological poker. The British know Klaus wants the briefcase. They want him to have it, but they can't just give it to him. If they hand it over, the Germans will know it's a fake. The Germans have to steal it. They have to fight for it. In intelligence, you only value what you have to work for. So, the British start to panic. Publicly, Hassel then demands the briefcase back. He sends urgent telegrams to Madrid. Telegrams he knows the Germans are intercepting. Vital documents missing. Recover immediately. Top secret. He acts frantic. He acts terrified. He creates the illusion that the Allies are desperate to get the briefcase back before the Germans see it. It works. Adolf Klaus takes the bait. He calls in every favor he has with the Spanish government. He bribes officials. He threatens. He cajoles. Let me see those papers. Just for an hour. The British will never know. The Spanish authorities are caught in the middle. They want to stay neutral, but they are terrified of the Germans. Finally, the pressure breaks them. A Spanish officer, sympathetic to the Nazis, agrees. He will take the briefcase out of the safe. He will bring it to a secret room. He will let the Germans open it. The trap is set. In London, Montague and Chumley get a message. The briefcase has been moved. They sit in room 13, staring at the map of Sicily. They have done everything they can. They have dressed the corpse. They have written the love letters. They have staged the panic. Now, the fate of the invasion of Europe rests on the skills of a German technician in a back room in Madrid. Can he open the envelope without breaking the wax seal? Can he read the letters without leaving a trace? And most importantly, will he believe what he reads? The true crime investigation has shifted. The detectives are now the Nazis, and they are looking for a flaw in the perfect murder. Madrid, May 8th, 1943. A locked room in the Spanish naval headquarters. The briefcase is on the table. It is still damp from the sea. Standing over it is a German agent, Karl Erich Kalenthal. He is one of the Abwehr's top men in Spain. He is ambitious, desperate for a win, and terrifyingly thorough. He has exactly 1 hour. The Spanish officer who smuggled the case out is pacing by the door, sweating. "Hurry," he whispers. "If the British find out." Kalenthal ignores him. He isn't interested in politics right now. He is interested in physics. The envelope inside the briefcase is sealed with red wax. It is stamped with the crest of the British Imperial General Staff. If he breaks the wax, the British will know the mail has been compromised. If they know, they will change their plans. The intelligence will be worthless. This is the forensic climax of the operation. It isn't a gunfight. It is a man with a thin metal probe and a Bunsen burner. Kalenthal's technician goes to work. He doesn't melt the wax. That would change its shape. He slides a heated needle under the flap of the envelope. He rolls it millimeter by millimeter. The paper curls. The wax holds. The tension in the room is suffocating. One slip of the hand, one tear in the paper, and the greatest deception of the war fails. Snap! The flap releases. The seal is intact. They pull the letters out. They photograph them. They dry them. They reinsert them. They reseal the flap. It is a masterclass in espionage. They have committed the perfect crime. Or so they think. Kalenthal reads the photographs. He sees the letter from General Nye. He reads the casual mention of the invasion plans. We are planning the idea that we are going for Sicily to cover the real operation in Greece. Kalenthal's heart races. It is the Holy Grail. The British are going to Greece. Sicily is a feint. It confirms everything Hitler already suspects. He rushes to his radio room. He encodes the message. He sends it marked most urgent. The signal flies across Europe, from Madrid to Berlin, straight to the Wolfschanz, the wolf's lair, Hitler's bunker. In London, room 13, the silence is breaking. A decrypted German message lands on Ewan Montague's desk. It is an intercept of the Abwehr transmission. Montague reads it. He looks at Chumley. He picks up the secure phone to Winston Churchill. "Prime Minister," he says, "mincemeat has been swallowed." "Swallow?" Churchill asks. "Whole." Montague replies. "Rod, line, and sinker." It seems like a victory, but this is the growing despair phase. Because in the world of intelligence, you never truly know if you've won until the shooting starts. What if the Germans are faking it? What if they realized the body was a tramp? What if they noticed that Major Martin's autopsy report didn't match the decay of a man drowned at sea? The British start seeing ghosts. They analyze the German troop movements. For 2 weeks, nothing happens. The German tanks sit in Sicily. The Luftwaffe stays in Italy. Montague begins to sweat. Do they fail? Did GLYNDWR Michael die in vain? Are they sending thousands of Allied soldiers into a trap because they played a game with a corpse? The doubt is paralyzing. They have played their card. Now they have to wait for the dealer to turn his. And then, on May 12th, the map of Europe begins to change. Berlin, the wolf's lair. Adolf Hitler sat at his desk. In front of him were the photographs of the documents found in the briefcase. He studied the letter from General Nye. He looked at the casual, chatty tone. To a paranoid mind, a secret found by accident is worth 1,000 intelligence reports. He believed it because he wanted to believe it. He had always feared an invasion of Greece. The Balkans were his weak flank. He made a decision that would change history. He picked up a pen. He signed an order. Operation Citadel, the massive tank offensive in Russia, was stripped of vital units. General Rommel was sent to Athens. 3 panzer divisions were ordered to move from France to Greece. The 1st Panzer Division was ordered to move from France to Sardinia. In London, the intercept from the Enigma machine began to pour in. Montague and Chumley watched the map. They saw the pins moving, not towards Sicily, but away from it. It was working. The dead homeless man was commanding the German army. But this brings us to the point of no return. July 9th, 1943, the eve of the invasion. The Allied Armada, the largest fleet of ships ever assembled in history, sets sail for Sicily. 160,000 men, 3,000 ships. The weather turned bad. A gale-force wind whipped the Mediterranean into a frenzy. The soldiers were seasick, terrified, huddled in the landing craft. In London, the mood in room 13 shifted from triumph to cold dread. They had moved the German pieces on the board, but had they moved enough of them? There were still German troops on Sicily. The Hermann Göring Division was there. The Italian Field Army was there. If the Germans realized the trick at the last second, if a single lookout saw the fleet and radioed, "It's Sicily, not Greece," those panzer divisions could turn around. Montague looked at the clock. He thought about GLYNDWR Michael, rotting in the Spanish soil under a gravestone that bore a false name. He realized the terrible responsibility of the hoax. If he was wrong, the beaches of Sicily would become a slaughterhouse. The sea would turn red, and it would be his fault. He had played a game with human lives. This is the dead end, the moment where the plan is out of your hands. You cannot recall the ships. You cannot change the course. You can only wait. The storm raged. The ships pitched in the black water. General Eisenhower, the Allied commander, considered calling it off. The weather was too rough. The risk was too high, but they went anyway, because they had a secret weapon. They had the element of surprise. Or at least, they hoped they did. July 10th, 3 a.m. The first landing craft hit the beaches of Sicily. The ramp dropped. The soldiers ran into the surf, expecting machine gun fire. They expected the beach to explode. They expected death. Instead, they found silence. The beaches were lightly defended. The Italian coastal troops surrendered almost immediately. The German panzers were miles away, positioned on the wrong side of the island, or halfway to Greece. The British and Americans poured ashore. They established a beachhead. They started unloading the tanks. For the first few hours, it looked like a miracle. Minced meat had worked. But true crime stories always have a twist. The villain doesn't just give up. The Germans realized their mistake. The message went out from the German commander in Italy, Field Marshal Kesselring. Invasion in Sicily. It is the main thrust. He ordered the panzers to turn around. He ordered the Luftwaffe to attack the fleet. The lingering doubt exploded into violence. The deception had bought the Allies time, precious, vital hours, but it hadn't bought them a free pass. The battle for Sicily began in earnest. And back in London, Montague waited for the casualty reports. Major Martin had done his job. Now, the living had to do theirs. The breakthrough wasn't just that the Allies landed. It was what happened next. Usually, in war, once the enemy reveals his hand, the element of surprise vanishes. Kesselring knew the Allies were in Sicily. He was screaming for reinforcements. He needed the panzer divisions that were sitting idle in Greece. But in Berlin, the ghost of GOYNDWR Michael was still whispering in Hitler's ear. This is the most incredible part of the confrontation. It wasn't a battle of tanks. It was a battle of belief. Adolf Hitler stared at the maps. He saw the reports from Sicily, but he also saw the documents from the briefcase. He had been convinced, utterly convinced, that Sicily was a diversion, a feint designed to draw his troops away from the real target, Greece. So, even as the British and Americans were storming the Sicilian hills, Hitler refused to move his chess pieces. He kept General Rommel in Greece. He kept the 1st Panzer Division in Greece. He kept the torpedo boats in Greece. They stood on the beaches of the Aegean, scanning the horizon for an invasion fleet that would never come. They watched the empty sea while their comrades in Sicily were being overrun. In London, Ewan Montague read the intercepts with disbelief. He had hoped to fool Hitler for a few days. He never imagined the lie would hold for weeks. Major Martin was holding back an entire German army with his cold, dead hand. By August 17th, Sicily had fallen. The consequences were seismic. The loss of Sicily broke the back of the Italian fascist regime. Mussolini was deposed. Italy surrendered. The soft underbelly of Europe was ripped open. The casualty count came in. The Allies lost roughly 6,000 men killed. It is a terrible number. Every life is a tragedy. But the planners had estimated 30,000 dead, 24,000 men. Imagine a football stadium filled with young men. That is how many people lived because of the homeless man from Wales. That is how many sons returned to their mothers because of a lie in a briefcase. But the story didn't end with a victory parade. In Huelva, Spain, the grave of Major William Martin was quiet. The flowers had wilted. The Spanish sun baked the earth. But in Berlin, the investigation into the failure began. The Abwehr, the German intelligence service, was under siege. Hitler was furious. How had they been so wrong? How had they let the Allies walk into Europe? They went back to the files. They looked at the photographs of the documents. They reanalyzed the autopsy report. And slowly, the terrifying realization dawned on them. There was no Major Martin. The letter was a fake. The casual gossip was a script. They had been played. The head of the Abwehr, Admiral Canaris, realized the truth. But he didn't tell Hitler. Why? Because to admit that the German intelligence machine had been fooled by a corpse would be a death sentence for everyone involved. So, the Germans buried the truth, just as the British had buried the body. The lie became a secret that both sides kept. In London, Montague and Chumley were promoted. They were celebrated in the shadows. But they carried a secret burden. They knew the name of the man who had really won the battle. Gyndwr Michael. He wasn't a major. He wasn't a hero in life. He was a man who had been failed by his society. He died alone, in pain, unwanted. And yet, in death, he had achieved more than any general. This brings us to the confession. After the war, Ewan Montague wrote a book, The Man Who Never Was. It became a bestseller. It became a movie. But Montague lied in the book. He protected the identity of the corpse. He claimed the man had died of pneumonia, that his family had given permission. He painted a picture of a noble sacrifice. He didn't tell the world about the rat poison. He didn't tell the world about the body snatching. He didn't tell the world that they had stolen a man's identity without his consent. For 50 years, the world believed the legend of Major Martin. The gravestone in Spain became a pilgrimage site. People left flowers for the brave Marine who drowned saving Europe. They were mourning a fiction. It wasn't until 1996, 53 years after the operation, that an amateur historian found the real evidence in the National Archives. He found the death certificate. He found the coroner's notes. He found the name. Gyndwr Michael. 1996. The British government declassifies the file. The truth, buried for 53 years under layers of official secrets and polite lies, finally breaks the surface. This is the confrontation. But it isn't a shootout. It is a confrontation with our own morality. For decades, the world celebrated the genius of Ewan Montague. They celebrated the cleverness of the spy who tricked Hitler. But when the name Gyndwr Michael was revealed, the applause stopped. An uncomfortable silence settled over the historians. We had to face the ugly reality of the perfect crime. Gyndwr Michael didn't volunteer. He didn't die for king and country. He died because he was hungry, mentally ill, and ate poison off the floor of a warehouse. And when he died, the state didn't mourn him. It stole him. It stripped him naked. It froze him. It dragged him across Europe. It threw him into the sea. Is it a war crime to desecrate a body if it saves 24,000 lives? This is the question that lies beneath the metal. It is the confession that war forces us to make. That victory is often built on the bones of the powerless. In London, the debate raged. Some called it a necessary evil. Others called it a grotesque violation of human rights. But in Huelva, Spain, something remarkable happened. The grave of Major Martin had been tended for decades by the daughter of a Spanish worker. She had put fresh flowers on it every week, believing a hero lay beneath. When she was told the truth, that it was a homeless tramp named Gyndwr, she didn't stop coming. She brought more flowers, because in a way, the truth made the sacrifice even more profound. A major expects to die. A major signs up for the risk. Gyndwr Michael was drafted by fate. He was the ultimate underdog, the man who had nothing, yet gave everything. The Commonwealth War Graves Commission made a decision. They would not exhume the body. They would not move him. Instead, they sent a stonemason to Huelva. He knelt in the dirt of the cemetery, the same cemetery where the German spy Adolf Kloss had once stood watching the funeral. The mason chiseled a new inscription into the weathered stone. It was an admission, a correction, an apology. Gyndwr Michael served as Major William Martin, RM. It linked the two identities forever, the fiction and the reality, the ghost and the man. But there is one final twist in this investigation. One detail that suggests the British intelligence officers, Montague and Chumley, weren't as cold-blooded as they seemed. In the original file, amidst the plans and the maps, there is a note about the funeral. Commander Jewell, The submarine captain had orders to just dump the body and leave. Speed was essential. The Seraph was in dangerous waters. But he didn't just dump it. He held a service. He read the psalm. And in the briefcase, the key detail that fooled the Germans, the love letters from Pam. There was a genuine tenderness. Montague had kept a copy of the photo of Pam. He kept it in his wallet for the rest of his life, not as a trophy of a trick, but perhaps as a memento of the friend he never met. The operation was cold, but the men who ran it were haunted by the warmth of the life they had stolen. Klaus Barbie, in our previous story, burned the evidence to hide his guilt. Montague hid the evidence to protect the dignity of his victim. It's a subtle difference, but it defines the moral gray zone of the good war. In 1997, a memorial service was held at the grave. A Welsh Choisson. They sang Caelan Lawn, a hymn about a pure heart. I don't ask for a luxurious life, the world's gold or its fine pearls. I ask for a happy heart, an honest heart, a pure heart. It was the funeral Gyndwr Michael never got in London. It was the recognition he was denied in life. The villain of the story, the Nazi war machine, was defeated by a lie. But the hero of the story, the homeless man, was redeemed by the truth. The confrontation between the myth of the man who never was and the reality of the man who was finally ended in peace. Today, if you walk through the cemetery in Huelva, past the rows of Spanish graves, you will find it. It is simple, white stone, tended by the British government and the people of Spain. It is the final resting place of the man who saved Sicily. But the justice in this story isn't just about a name on a stone. It is about the scale of the debt we owe. Historians estimate that Operation Mincemeat saved thousands of lives on the beaches of Sicily. But its impact rippled far beyond that. Because Hitler had moved so many tanks to Greece, the Russian front was weakened. The Battle of Kursk, the greatest tank battle in history, might have ended differently if those panzer divisions had been where they were supposed to be. Gyndwr Michael didn't just fool a general. He tilted the axis of the entire war. Think about the irony. In life, he was invisible. People walked past him on the street without a glance. He was a nuisance, a statistic, a failure of the system. But in death, he commanded armies. He dictated the movements of the most powerful military machine on earth. He made Adolf Hitler dance to his tune. This is the ultimate vindication of the little man. The system that let him starve eventually had to bow to him to survive. Ewan Montague, the mastermind, lived a long life. He became a judge, but until the day he died, he never forgot the man in the cooler. He wrote, "We stole this man's death, but we gave him a life he could never have dreamed of." It's a comforting thought, but is it true? That is the question that lingers. Did we honor him, or did we use him? True crime usually ends with the killer in cuffs. In this story, the killer, the phosphorus, was just a tool of fate. The real perpetrators were the desperate men in London who decided that the ends justified the means. And perhaps they were right. Perhaps in a war against absolute evil, you have to do evil things to win. You have to become a body snatcher to stop a genocide. But let's go back to that morning in April 1943. To the fisherman, Jose. He pulled a body from the sea. He saw a uniform. He saw a briefcase. He thought he was looking at a tragedy. He was actually looking at the turning point of the 20th century. So, the next time you hear about the great men of history, the Churchills, the Eisenhowers, the Pattons, remember the man who outranked them all in impact, if not in title. Remember the man who never fired a gun. Remember the man who never marched. Remember the man who died of rat poison in a cold warehouse in London, alone and unloved. Gyndwr Michael, the tramp who saved the world. The man who never was, but who finally is.